So this week we're joined again by Ellen to talk about the one topic that we missed last time, which was we were going to discuss history education, and specifically around the Holocaust, I believe, is what you wanted to talk about, Ellen.
Yeah, so sorry for anyone who was hoping for something slightly cheery.
Well, that's what the quickfire questions are for later, kind of.
Ah, this is true. So I saw an article back in September that had said that 2/3 of young Americans, so people our age, slightly older, and Gen Z, don't know what the Holocaust is or have no information about it, or what goes on. And I think actually, as someone who's European and has studied European history, that's quite shocking. I don't know what that claim sounds like to you guys, or what that
I think it's pretty scary, to be perfectly honest with you.
It's scary. What was Holocaust education like here for both of you? Do you guys remember being taught about it?
I don't know about you, Ellen, but I was pretty lucky in that I had quite a good history education. I had pretty decent history teachers all the way through my education, and we were taught not only about stuff that was on the curriculum, but also things that our history teachers thought were important for us to know. Whilst I think England is the only country that it's a legal requirement to have to teach, or it has to be some kind of Holocaust education has to be on the curriculum.
I think it is now.
Yeah, it might not be.
I think it's on the national curriculum, but in the past, I want to say maybe in the past 15 years, I think it's become a legal requirement. And I also remember, I think I was 13 at the time, the government were going to pay for 2 pupils from every sort of state comp, I think grammar school as well, to go visit Auschwitz every year, because I mean, I don't know if that followed through, but I remember
did you have a trip? Yeah, we had a trip.
No.
Yeah, we did. It was only we had like representatives from each form group, and it was only for the representatives of the form groups for that 1 year, so I didn't get a chance to go. However, we did have a survivor come in and do a talk at our school, so I was pretty lucky to be a part of that, which was an incredible experience. And we had a similar thing at university. What was it like in France?
We did. Fairly decent, I seem to remember. I remember being taught about it in secondary school, and they showed us sort of a documentary about it for one history lesson for like an hour, and then we discussed it again afterwards. I then remember it being repeated again in college, and we also had a survivor come, and she did a big sort of talk in one of our auditoriums to a bunch of various years. So it was pretty decent. I seem to remember, at least I knew a lot about it, and I went home and looked it up as well.
Your education seems actually a lot more, well, in that respect, you've kind of got a lot more interactive with it, because my school there was a lot of content. We didn't touch upon it obviously in primary school. I don't think they do that.
No.
I think they kind of ease you into the idea with the Second World War, because I'm not gonna lie, I think I can count on 2 hands how many times I've learned about the Second World War in the 17 years of going to school before I went to university. But I think I kind of knew what it was before I went to secondary school. I think I'd heard the word, but obviously wasn't completely sure. Went to secondary school and didn't touch upon it until year 9. So we did the classic Battle of Hastings, Elizabeth, all that type of stuff, all of the stuff that they think is kind of relevant.
Sure.
Is it really? Who knows? Depends on what part of history you like. But I remember learning about it, and I had a really good teacher at the time. She taught me for 4 years, and she was quite young, so she was kind of closer to our on our wavelength, rather than someone who was back end of 70. Not saying all history teachers are like that, because I was quite lucky and I didn't get that. I had 2 great female teachers, Miss Bartlett and Miss Kent. I don't know if Miss Kent, that's her name anymore, she could be married, but shout out. I mean, if they're watching, who knows? But they were those teachers that they taught you the curriculum, but it was very clear what their interests were outside of the curriculum. And Miss Bartlett, who only taught me for sixth form, and sorry, this is going to be a massive brag. Actually, it's the only thing I can brag about my entire life. So GCSE history, I got a C, which is obviously bang average, and I was really disappointed, but I wanted to go do it for A-level anyway. And they said to me, they were like, look, if you don't do well this year, we're going to tell you to drop it. Biggest comeback ever that they've seen. I've got the highest AS level mark ever. So
no
screw everyone that told me I couldn't do it.
Nice.
Yeah, and that was, so part of that was 2 separate papers, and one of them was the British depth study. Don't know if you've ever heard of that, but basically you covered 3 wars, and it was the Crimean, Second Boer War, and World War One. Again, done World War One to death. And
Crimean is interesting though.
Both of the others are really interesting.
Yeah, the Boer War is actually quite traumatic to learn about.
For sure.
I never learned about that, obviously. About the Crimean War.
Well, that's the thing. Crimean War is like, yeah, it's kind of interesting, but it's just quite drawn out and quite long.
Yeah.
Which wasn't particularly fun. And actually, that was the first time. This sounds really bad, but that was the first time that I actually realised that Florence Nightingale, that's the war she was
really,
associated with. And I was like, how has it taken me until the age of 16 to realise this? This is embarrassing. But forget all of that. Basically, the reason I wanted to talk about the Holocaust in particular, is because I know it's recent history, but it's still history, and it's incredibly important to learn about these things.
For sure.
And also the kind of precedent it set for other genocides that we learned about, which I ended up learning about at university. Great. Entire module on genocide. What more could you want from life?
Yeah, I had an entire lecture on genocide in uni as well.
Can you imagine 12 solid weeks? Here's more people killing people. And more people killing people. And the reason this topic kind of has stuck in my mind, I'm a vehement advocate for learning about all types of history, and I can't profess to be an expert in all of them, because I think that'd be absolutely insane. I don't think my brain could hold that much knowledge. But earlier this year, during the summer, we obviously had the Black Lives Matter protests and counter protests, and when statues started getting taken down and boarded up, and I saw this clip. I don't know about you guys, and I've got it up ready if you need me to play it, where this man was talking in front of the Winston Churchill statue with these group of really, they all look the same. These men all look the same. I can't differentiate between a lot of them. It's just a sea of white men. Sorry, guys.
Oh no, it's a skill that you learn. It's like going to lots of football matches. It's a skill that you learn to differentiate between the different kinds of drunk, middle-aged white men. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that he was drunk, but I'm pretty sure he was holding a Carlsberg can. And in this statement, it was a video that was put up by Vice, and he said that Winston Churchill killed Hitler. And, these people are desecrating the statue of Winston Churchill. And that is where the red flag went up. Because, as we all know, or as any right-thinking person should know, Hitler famously killed himself. Wait, yeah. I was expecting to get a laugh from that.
It's like... I feel so sorry for that guy. I thought that's my instant reaction was like, yeah, a bit of Mickey taking, obviously, because it's ridiculous, and he's standing in front of defending a statue, and he doesn't even understand the history of that statue. But that makes me feel so sad. Like, I feel like as a society we have fouled that guy. We have fouled people that believe that that's the history.
Exactly. But it's also not correct. That's the thing. Yeah, and there are these people that profess it to be the correct way that we remember history, when actually I retweeted this video and said, I'm pretty sure it was the Soviets who stormed Berlin and found him dead in his bunker, which, as most people who've done history will know, the Soviets did storm Berlin. It was an Allied effort, but it was the Soviets. And
that's why he killed himself, really.
And as the success of I wouldn't even call it a success of World War II, it was an effort. It was an Allied effort where, there are all these different opinions, and in my opinion, it's changed throughout the years. I don't know what you believe. Actually, World War II wasn't won by Britain, by the UK. France had fallen. We failed to help them. Russia actually were the ones who kind of put the pin in it and, quote unquote, won the Second World War. In my opinion, although we were
I would argue that the World War II, in particular, the United States had a ginormous impact on.
Really? See, I'm the opposite.
Yeah, the Allied victory.
Yeah, I'm the opposite.
So I think that your key point is, I couldn't agree more. I think this perception that we have, and we should be incredibly proud of the bravery of every single person during the war effort, no matter where they came from, and we should remember them and talk about them and speak about their experiences for the rest of our lives and ensure that our children do the same. But this fetishization of World War II has to end. We cannot use it to inform decisions that we're making at the moment, because we don't have to deal with COVID because we're Britain and we won the war, and this whole that whole theme that runs through discourse in this country is so toxic. It was a horrific period in history. And like you say, we should learn about it, but in the truest sense that we possibly can. And there, we could get into a historical debate probably for hours, but there I completely
we can save that for another day.
Yeah, for sure. I'm completely with you, and I think it's actually sad in many ways, the point that we've got to with discussing the war in this country.
And it's in my opinion, it's embarrassing that these conversations are allowed to go on and people aren't being picked up on it. I understand, history is usually written by the winners of whatever battle. If there is a battle, that's how people remember history. But from learning from that, or what you would consider the winner's side of history, I would say actually I've come out with a view of, Britain aren't all that great. And there's a massive conversation now about people, if you don't like this country, you can get out. I'm from here. I was born here. I don't have my parents, my parents were born here, but I have relatives, ancestors that aren't from here. So does that automatically mean that I should go back to where they came from, despite the fact I have no sort of relation to it?
Of course not.
And
it's a ridiculous argument.
Exactly. It's ridiculous. And I think you're allowed to, be critical of your country and still, kind of love it at the same time for other reasons.
To me, that is what patriotism is. I love this country so much. I'm so proud to come from this country. There's lots of things that this country has done, lots of opportunities this country gives people that I'm incredibly proud of. I'm not so delusional to sit there and say that we've never done anything bad. In fact, I think we've committed some atrocities ourselves across the world, and I think it's incredibly important that we learn about that stuff. But part of patriotism to me is saying I want us to be the best place in the world to live, from a point of view of education and wages and job security and healthcare and university standards and living standards, etc., etc. They're the things that I want to fight for, because that's what people died for in wars. That's what people go away and fight for. It's not to guard already well-established vested interests. It's to improve the lives of the people that live here. And to say that if you criticise what's going on in the country, you're not a patriot, I think is such a misguided viewpoint.
I mean, I don't consider myself a patriot in that sort of sense. I don't that word necessarily, but
is that because it's been hijacked by? Sorry, is that because it's been hijacked by people who you disagree with, sort of politically?
I think. I mean, I've never really used the word.
Sure.
And I mean, there's always that connotation that it relates to nationalist, and that actually, kind of they're two separate things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm definitely proud of my country. I don't necessarily like the particular part where I'm from, because my ideals just don't go with where I'm from. But that's fine. I think everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and can still be, like you said, be critical of certain things, but also love certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't consider myself a patriot, only because I'm kind of like, I don't think people know what it really means.
Sure.
It's different for everyone.
Well, I think, Brett, sorry, I know you want to jump in. I think
sorry, Brett.
That's why that word needs reclaiming, because it has all these negative connotations and all these, connotations to nationalism and sort of like slippery slopes and dangerous thinking. And that's why I think that there are certain aspects of political society that haven't, or from certain viewpoints that haven't done a good enough job of like guarding the best parts and challenging the worst parts of this country and wanting to change them. Brett, mate, go ahead.
I was just going to ask if you guys... there's been a lot of talk recently about certain aspects of our history being overlooked in the curriculum. And I was actually just thinking a minute ago how, despite getting a pretty good understanding of what was involved in the Holocaust and how it came to happen from my education in France, I don't really remember them talking much about how France helped in the process of they sent Jews to concentration camps. They collaborated with Nazi Germany, at least the regime did at the time that took over.
I mean, I know a little bit about it, not massively, only because obviously we talk from a British perspective, not a French perspective.
Sure.
And I mean, from what I know, obviously, between the First World War and the Second World War, obviously France was trying to rebuild itself, and it did get on its way. But obviously, after the Nazi occupation and the Vichy government were getting people to inform on others, and there was massive underground resistance and all that type of stuff. I mean, I don't, you're right, I don't necessarily know a lot. I know that there were like work intern camps in France, and a lot of them, most of them, I think some of them were Jews, some of them were like a lot of the French people who'd come over from like Africa. I think there was a lot of more black people in these work camps than there were actually in Nazi Germany. They weren't, that sounds really weird, but they weren't their main concern, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that there's...
Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, I think that there's themes to be taken from that we can learn from in this country. So, like, things like colonialism, I wasn't taught... the only aspects of colonialism I was taught were sort of brief parts of the slave trade, usually in Black History Month. And it's so crucial, in my opinion, to understand that Black History Month shouldn't just be used to teach about slavery. I think that is so disrespectful to Black history to just have it focus on slavery. That's something that needs to be a part of our curriculum. But also a period of German history in the 1980s and 1990s was in German it's Vergangenheitsbewältigung, and it means struggle to overcome the past. They there were sort of academic battles, educational battles, to understand what were the circumstances that led up to the Nazis taking power, what wasn't learned from that period, what could have been done to stop them, what can we do to stop this from happening again. And we have never had that period in this country, and many countries haven't had that period because it's a difficult part. Yeah, it's a difficult thing to face. It's uncomfortable. You have to have seriously uncomfortable conversations.
Exactly. These things are meant to be uncomfortable. They're not supposed to be good for everyone. Yeah. And just because you don't like something, you can't put it in a box and say that it didn't happen, because I think this is where France, Germany, they have actually made Holocaust denial illegal, which I think is great, because I mean, in my mind, I don't know how anyone can turn around and go, this didn't happen. Okay, hon, I've literally stood where some of these people died. Do you want to tell me I'm wrong? I mean, I don't know what it is obviously like for you, Brett, in France with that sort of thing, but I think sorry, I'm getting frustrated because
of course.
We're talking about it. Obviously, this conversation needs to happen. Anyway, Brett, go. I know you want to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's funny because, again, I'm speaking from my perspective, but again, in France, I remember specific things that they taught us about that I thought were shocking from a French perspective. They spoke to us about the French-Algerian war that happened in the, I want to say 70s. And they openly spoke to us about how brutal the French army was towards the Algerians, and how did horrid things, like things that are definitely crimes against humanity. They would torture people. They would dismember
the Armenian
and mangle
War
people.
As well.
Yeah, but then they didn't tell us.
Genocide.
Then they didn't tell us about the whole collaboration very much with Germany during the time that maybe they don't consider that their history. They focused more on the resistance, as you can imagine. There's also a part in my sort of my remembering of what we were taught, where we were taught up to the French Revolution, so 1789, the New Republic, and then for about 20 years, but in the early 1800s, is completely ignored, which was the time that Napoleon took over and was basically a dictator and invaded most of Europe. So
they don't teach you about Napoleon.
They don't.
Crazy.
They don't. We didn't have a single lesson on Waterloo or Trafalgar or any of the battles that took place. They probably wouldn't, because I guess they lost those battles. But none of the other battles, none of his campaigns. We learned about his coronation and about sort of what vaguely happened to him at the end. But I had to look it up recently to actually properly remember what happened, because I'm interested in that part of history, so I think I would know if I'd been taught about it. So
my area of expertise, so I don't know a lot about it. I kind of just know the brief overview.
Sure.
But that's really interesting. I'm baffled.
Yeah.
But the impact of that is that many people, including myself, have this skewed vision of history, and it's so important to understand that we constantly have to go back and look at things and challenge our own perceptions. And a lot of introspection I did over the early parts of this year, when George Floyd was murdered, and throughout the Black Lives Matter campaign, which is still so relevant at the moment, and will be until we finally start to actually solve these issues. The cause that it has, Ellen, like you brought up, that guy who thought that Winston Churchill killed Hitler, or more recently, I mean, Brett, I think it was either yesterday or the day before, I was speaking to you about a story that I was reading about, where somebody tweeted that a road in North London was going to be changed.
It's West London, I think.
West London, that was going to be changed to be called Guru Nanak Road, and somebody tweeted saying, "Absolutely disgusting. We wouldn't go to other countries and change their road names." And I'm like, that's literally what we did. We went to other countries and completely changed the architecture, the culture, the names, enforced our language. Exactly. Like, the misunderstanding of this stuff is so damaging, and I don't want to point the finger at people that haven't been taught about this stuff. It's about looking at the system and saying, we have failed in such a systemic manner to not teach this stuff, that it is actually dangerous to society. To society.
There needs to be a rework of the curriculum, I think, in terms of history, and we need to fully incorporate the parts of our history that we are ashamed of and that weren't. But then again, I would also encourage people to do their own reading and to watch documentaries, because history is broad and huge, and you can learn, or you could try to learn as much about your own country as possible. But there's so much about these other countries you'll know nothing about. So it's so important to go and do your own research. And honestly, diving down a Wikipedia rabbit hole is a lot of fun.
So just to go back to talking about the curriculums, a third of my history GCSE was learning about the history of medicine.
I didn't do that. I had something different. My brother and my friends did that
it
at
was
school.
But a third of the entire GCSE, when there's so much to learn about, is that necessary? Is that the most important things that we could have been learning about? Really? I don't know if it was particularly. And I learned a lot of interesting stuff, but
surely there's also so much you can say about the discovery of certain,
like penicillin and tourniquets,
invented
exactly,
yeah. There we go. That's all you need to know.
Yeah,
it's like my cousin. She's 18, but she did history GCSE and did that. And I remember I've never done it. I've never done history of medicine. That's not my bag. That's not what I'm interested in. I mean, we could get into Joseph Mengele and angel of death or whatever. That's a whole other thing.
Very interesting.
And that was actually what my dissertation was about. I cracked that out. And about the German euthanasia program.
Do you know about the?
Yes,
because that's what my dissertation was on the Volksgemeinschaft.
See.
Yeah. So crossover.
Mine was on music in Lord of the Rings.
Way more interesting.
I remember when I was in first year and we had a module called World Ideologies, and it was really weird. And one week it was about environmentalism and romanticism. And I just remember my seminar used to be at 5 o'clock on a Friday. So me and my friends would go to the pub because no one used to turn up to the lesson. So we went to the pub, and I remember sitting in this really weird room, and they started talking about Lord of the Rings. And I was just like, what is going on? And I remember just looking at my friends like, am I really this drunk? Like, what are they talking about? But fair enough. I mean, if that's what you're into. But yeah, and my kind of take on that, this is such a plug. This is my city undergrad dissertation that I managed to get out. Because just on the history of science and stuff like that. Also, what kind of concerns me is the fact that history is also being misrepresented by prominent figures, which kind of really kind of grates on me. And funnily enough, or luckily enough, just a couple of weeks before my dissertation was due, does anyone remember the lovely press secretary for the White House, Sean Spicer?
Yes.
So he said that someone as despicable as Hitler was not as bad as the current Syrian president, Bashar al-Assad, as he did not sink to the level of using chemical weapons on his own people. Right. There's a massive error there.
Jesus
Take
Christ.
A deep breath.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what really, I mean, my dissertation is about the
when
age program. So that's
when I thought it's one of the most ridiculous statements of all time. And when I talk about not blaming individuals, that's only relevant up to a point. When you have a platform like that, and you have responsibility like that, and you have that much influence, and you say something as dangerously ignorant and stupid as that, then okay, now we have a problem. He
was the press secretary, and surely those speeches get a look over before he goes out.
Of course, but doesn't that show how dense the people in the White House in that administration are at every level, top down, like the press secretary to the most powerful person on the planet said something as ludicrous as that.
And I think it's just backed up by the fact, the initial thing that I said was two-thirds of young Americans don't know what the Holocaust is. Yeah. And really interestingly, the state that was found to have the least knowledge about it was New York, where a lot of Jewish immigrants went to, Holocaust survivors went to after the war.
That's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. And they have the highest population of Jewish Americans, I think, in the country.
Yeah.
And that completely baffled me. And I think, I don't know what they teach over there.
No, it'd be interesting to get somebody on to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, if we have any American friends that do.
I probably think of some people, yeah. Yeah, it might be an idea if anybody wants to get in touch.
And it's I think approaching all of these issues with the sort of open-mindedness that we always preach on the show, and looking at things from a human perspective, because there's so much that you can learn, like you mentioned earlier, Brett, and there's so many of these things. Like, you can fill up probably a whole course on different genocides that have occurred throughout history. There's been so many, and it's like you say, so important to learn about this stuff, especially when history repeats itself on a regular basis. It's not like this stuff isn't happening around the world. You just have to look at what's going on, in certain regions of China at the moment. And
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move on to current events to quickly to kind of tie into what we were just saying about medicine. Today is Wednesday the 2nd, so we have just been sort of released from our second lockdown.
Not for me, it's not.
You could still.
Oh, you're in Kent.
You're not completely locked down, though.
It's bullshit.
But I talk about the medicine thing because Boris Johnson did a press conference literally an hour ago, or started it an hour ago. It might still be ongoing. I don't know. Saying that the vaccine is basically ready to be shipped out and administered to people, and they're going to start next week.
Did you see that Piers Morgan and Matt Hancock are going to do it, and Susanna Reid are going to do it live on Good Morning Britain?
I saw that Boris Johnson said he was happy to do it live as well.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't think they should be getting it. Which I think is really positive. Getting it last.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, they do have a priority system. They do have a priority system. The people that are first supposed to get it are people in care homes and the NHS homes.
Piers Morgan, Matt Hancock, Susanna Reid, and then the people that really need it. That's the priority system. Yeah. But I think it's positive that they're taking it live, because I think that it will break a lot of the taboos around it. Not even taboos, but a lot of the misinformation around it needs to be broken.
To be fair, though, the people that they're trying to convince, are they not just going to say he's just injecting water into his veins? Are they not just going to say something like that?
Anyone who knows about injections or has been to the doctor knows that's dangerous. Sorry.
Science isn't something that is going to necessarily win over people that believe that a microchip is being implanted into your system. Like, I was listening to James O'Brien the other day, and a woman was on there arguing that they didn't want to take the vaccine because it had aborted fetus in it. Genuinely. And the one of the ingredients, if that's the term to use, in the vaccine was developed in 1968 by using cells from a fetus. So the only thing, if there was never another abortion in the history of the world, we would still be able to use the vaccine. It's not that bits of aborted fetus are in the vaccine. It's that one of the things that is used was developed in 1968 from an aborted fetus. That was a reason that somebody called into a national radio show and used to not take the vaccine. I am beyond words.
Oh my god, I'm losing the will to live.
So I have a question for you both, and I don't know if this is a quickfire question, Brett, so I apologise if it is. Do you think
if it is, I will be annoyed.
Do you think there should? Do you two think there should be restrictions on people going to public places that haven't taken the vaccines?
I have an answer, so I will answer.
I kind of think.
Oh no, go ahead.
Go.
If you do have one. I've told you, Joe, before. I think it should be at the discretion of whichever establishments, whatever the establishments decide. If an establishment decides they don't want people to come into their premises and without having the vaccine, then they shouldn't be allowed to. I guess that would then mean that they'd either have to bring in some certificate saying that they've had the vaccine, or they'd have to maybe implement it into the NHS track and trace system or something.
We have that for yellow fever. When I got a yellow fever vaccine 3 years ago, they give you a little card to prove that you have it, and also there's records if you've ever had vaccines like Hep A, B, C. I've had the cholera drink. I've never had that, but there's lists. I kind of just think like I'm that person that's, unless I really need to get it because it's actually stopping me from doing things and going about my daily life, I'll do it. I mean, I'm not going to be at the front of the queue, because I kind of think actually, there are people that need it more than I do. But you're totally right, Brett. It's completely at the establishment's discretion, because at the end of the day, that is. That's basically how businesses and shops work. They are allowed to make their own rules. If they don't want you in their premises, they can say that.
Yeah.
If it's like a care home, though, in that kind of situation, should there be a law in that case that says...
So, what I was trying to get at was, should the government be mandating who can and can't go to places? I personally don't think they should be. I think it's up to private companies whether they feel they want to let people on. And the funniest example of this was, again on Twitter, somebody quoted a tweet that Qantas, the airline, had put out saying, we're not going to allow anybody that hadn't taken the vaccine to get on our flights. And somebody was like, this is against my human rights, absolutely disgusting, boycott Qantas. And it's like, it's you do not have the human right to fly Qantas. That isn't that isn't encompassed in your human rights.
You don't have the human right to fly.
It's a great airline.
No, that is also true. I've never flown Qantas personally. But
it's all right. It does well. I think Emirates is Emirates is better. But you know,
I've never flown Emirates either. Yeah.
Oh, you need to go to some new places. Go across the world. It's fun. I do agree with you. It's this is also true. What am I on? I think I'm just desperate for a holiday. Can you tell?
So am I.
No, I think you're right. I don't think the government should necessarily mandate it. I think if it's going to be, brought in as a mandate for people that are in hospital, probably the best idea is to kind of, enforce something towards that, because obviously it's going to help, especially if you're, not in there for COVID and you end up getting it. So it's to protect you at the end of the day, isn't it? So
should it be mandatory for NHS staff?
No, I don't think so.
I don't know. I'm not qualified to answer that question.
I was going to say, I see. I have a few friends that work for the NHS, and I kind of think, you know what, if they feel that they are being safe enough, especially in the job that they're doing, I think it obviously should be up to them. I guess if you're not exposed to it, then yeah.
I really don't like the idea of forcing anybody to take a vaccine. I just do not like it. I don't. Bloody hell, I've got something in my eye. Christ on a bike.
Karma coming back.
It's the anti-vaxxers. I don't think that we should be mandating anybody to take a vaccine. Personally, I think that is sort of.
I mean, I would hope that
too far.
Yeah, I would hope that any NHS staff member who's thinking about not taking it would probably feel pressure from the rest of their colleagues.
Yeah, they've been cracking down. They've been cracking down the NHS on people that have been saying that, like NHS staff that have been sort of skeptical about the vaccine and saying to them,
it's not a place to be skeptical.
Yeah.
Look, these are scientists at the end of the day. Like, these people know what they're talking about. Like, it's not. It shouldn't be, and it's not a conversation that should be up for debate whether it's effective or not.
Even if I'd done a bit of reading on vaccines, I still wouldn't be anywhere near qualified to say whether, what the efficacy is. I have no idea. The gaps in my knowledge are so broad that even talking about it on this level is sort of pushing the limits a little bit,
In that case, I'll move away from this topic. We're running a bit short on time, so I'll go straight to quickfire questions because they generally aren't particularly quickfire. So, my first quickfire question is: do you think the High Court stating that children under 16 with gender dysphoria are unlikely to be able to give informed consent to undergo treatment is transphobic?
No, I don't.
No, because I read this only because I don't think it's transphobic, but I think it's it's a case of 16 is the age of consent for a lot of things.
Yeah.
So I feel like if they should be the one that should be able to give their own consent, and 16 is obviously the age that they've been deemed capable enough to do that. I don't think it's transphobic. I think people are just really trying to make sure that actually this is what you want, and by this age, you are, you can make the decision that's going to determine the rest of your life. And I think it's being safe.
It's also not restricting those that are under 16 from having any kind of sort of gender realignment surgery. It's just saying that they need their parental consent, right? So I see the problems with the system. You have children who are trans and want to transition fully and aren't able to because they don't have parents that believe that they should, and their mental health is deeply impacted by that. But I think that there needs to be an age, and what I think we also need to do is educate parents, educate as a society as to this issue and why it's important to support your kids in those situations. So yeah,
for sure. I would also say no in that regard, but it is a tough question because I know that people are very passionate about the topic. My second question is: will there be a third lockdown? Which might be a bit obsolete given the. You think so?
No.
See, I think it's a bit of an obsolete question now.
It'll be like this lockdown, not like.
What do you mean? It'll be like the tier system or like the national lockdown we just had?
I think it'll be like. I think it will be, if there is another lockdown, I think it will be like lockdown 2.0, not lockdown 1.
Right. Okay.
Right. So like a circuit breaker one. Yeah. No, I don't think there will be. No, I don't think there will be.
Oh.
I don't think the government have the political capital or the balls.
No. I think I would have said that yes. I think that there was going to be one until the press conference that happened an hour and 20 minutes ago.
Sure.
Yeah. Give it until January. Who knows?
Yeah. If they cock up rolling the vaccine out, anything could happen.
Exactly. Yeah. We didn't really. Yeah. I guess we didn't really talk about how much we trust them to properly roll out the vaccine.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I kind of just think again, like that's the thing. You know, this vaccine has been developed by the best people in the world that in their field, and it's, you know, there's. I just, you know, I trust these people. Like, okay, I don't trust the government. But you're right.
They're not in charge of rolling out the vaccine, though, right? The people who've made it.
It's going to be the military that are supporting it, isn't it? So hopefully the logistics will be sound. But
I don't agree with that.
But my third question is: should shops be allowed to open for 24 hours a day over the Christmas period and in January, like has been announced?
People queuing up outside Primark at like 5 o'clock this morning at Bluewater. Like seriously, what? Like, they should be allowed.
My dad was Paul Marchant like 20 years ago, so I've met Paul Marchant once, who's the CEO of Primark. He seems nice.
Okay.
Interesting.
I mean, I don't like. Yeah, I mean, I kind of just think, you know what, these businesses have got to get back on its feet, and Primark is an exception because it doesn't have a website where you can sell products. In that respect. Yeah, so I think that's why they're doing it, and obviously Debenhams are doing it because they're into admin.
That's such a weird prospect.
Let them do whatever they want.
Yeah, I completely agree. Why doesn't Primark have a website that you can buy clothes from?
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's because outdated. Yeah, I know. Not that I have any influence over what this man does with his life, and his company. But basically, I think it's because the quality, the amount of products and the variety of products is so large that it's not, and the amount that they sell them for, it's not like worth their time to create a website, because actually, it's not. Yeah, it's not economically viable. I think that's basically what my dad's told me. I don't know if it's true.
Fair enough. It sounds plausible. Yeah.
But yeah, so they don't have a website, so that's why they're opening.
But they can do what they want. They can, you know, in those situations, as long as they're paying their workers properly and giving them proper hours and proper breaks. That's when I, you know, have a bit of an issue. But yeah.
Does it? Do you think it makes sense in terms of the situation we're currently in? The fact that this would probably.
We'll just have to see if people are going at 3 o'clock in the morning. Because I don't know anyone that would actually go.
If they're open for there's definitely people out there. There definitely is. I worked at Next the sales were some of the most insane times that I've seen. What I was going to say was, if they're open for longer, does that mean that it will be more spread out, so they'll be less busy? Say they only open for like sort of 7-8 hours, then maybe more people be crammed in. I don't know. As they should have precautions anyway. They should probably limit the amount of people that can go in to the store. Like Bluewater is a really weird example because we're in tier 3 here, and I can't go and have a meal with social distancing, but I can go to Bluewater.
Yeah.
Which makes no sense.
Another inconsistency.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Can't go.
Kent is weird.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, Kent is weird.
But you can go to Primark at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Maybe that's what I'll just do.
Go take a drink
in my spare time now.
My next question is, what's your favourite Christmas song?
Feliz Navidad.
Oh.
What's yours?
What?
Feliz Navidad.
Step.
Have you not heard it?
Why is Step Into Christmas, Elton John?
It's a good one.
That's a good one, actually, yeah.
I don't know why. I just really like it.
I like the darkness one. But I also
What's it called?
Don't Let the Bells End.
Let the bells ring. Don't let the bells end. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And I also like the Queen one.
I don't know that one.
Which was, what is that called?
Which one's the Queen one?
It's Christmas. Thank God it's Christmas.
Thank God it's Christmas. I think that's average.
I don't know.
I think that's average.
Really?
I don't think I know it.
You'll probably recognise it if you heard it.
Yeah, you would.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, definitely.
I also really like the Live Aid one, which is Do They Know It's Christmas? Although I do realise it's incredibly outdated. I actually really like the song.
My first ever piece of any kind of political activism was convincing my form group at school. So the way my school was set up was we had 4 colleges. So there was like 2 colleges here, 2 colleges here. They had balconies that overlooked each other, and then we had like a garden area in the middle, right? It was a really new building. And
that's like Hogwarts.
we would stand on the balconies and sing like carols at Christmas. When we had the remembrance service, we'd all stand on the side. And my first piece of political activism was getting my entire form group to put their fingers on their lips and not sing the Live Aid song.
Fair enough.
That was
I know it's like not, kind of politically correct, but I actually just quite like the song.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we boycotted it, and my form tutor got into trouble because she had nothing to do with it, but I convinced everybody to do it, and she got into trouble for it. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, there you go.
My last question is this is another music related one. What music do you listen to that you would describe as a guilty pleasure?
High School Musical.
Is that, yeah?
I absolutely love it.
It's got to be the Cheeky Girls, isn't it, Brett?
I don't actively listen to the Cheeky Girls, though.
I just have that one song, though.
The Cheeky song is the only Cheeky Girls song that you need in your life.
I was going to say mine would probably be something like 80s Madonna.
That's not guilty. Yeah. That's quality. Is it guilty?
I mean, like... I get judged every time I put it on.
Really?
So I would say, yeah, probably.
By Kate, though? Do you get judged by Kate?
Well, by Kate, by most people. Other than you, right. Obviously, because you'll listen to anything.
Do you know what I've been listening to a lot? And it's funny that we should have this conversation on the day that the Spotify, whatever they call it, roundup thing comes out.
Roundup thing.
Yeah, which is really cool, I think. I've been this year. I've listened to a lot of sort of opera stuff, so like tenors, Pavarotti and Botticelli and stuff like that this year. Yeah. For whatever reason, I've discovered. Yeah.
I had a lot of friends at uni that used to listen to like opera and classical music whilst they were revising and doing work, and I was like, fair enough.
Yeah, it's relaxing.
That floats your boat.
Yeah.
And I'm there with like
the
house
Cheeky
music
Girls.
and like no, like house music, like trying to like just pretend that I'm in a club and not like be doing this work. Basically, that was my life.
Music is great for that as well, just to relax and have on in the background when you're doing something. Cool. Well, that was my last question. Thanks for joining us again, Ellen. That's very interesting.
It's not about plants.
Yeah. Cheers.
Yeah, it wasn't about plants this week. I'll come up with a plant one for next time. Plant-related question.
It's going to be a good one, though.
I'm sure I can come up with something. All right. Thanks, guys. See you next
week.
Thank
you so much. I really appreciate it. Cheers.
See you later.
Bye.